Hey everybody, it's Eric Pappenfuss. It's Black Friday, so it must be a buy day, and I hope you're out shopping and supporting your favorite retailer. I know we've got amazing holiday specials at the Scholar, so come on down and check those out. I wanted to talk today, though, about my trip last Saturday to York, Pennsylvania for the International Postcard Expo. It was so much fun, and yes, we got postcards, all sorts of Pennsylvania postcards now added here to the collectibles building. But I went in search of stereo views, and I found stereo views. So let's get right to it. At the postcard show, I found a whole bunch of interesting stereo views from 1870 of famous personalities. There was one man, and then a whole bunch of fascinating actresses. And let's start with the man first, and then we'll get to the actresses, because this man is none other than the great American preacher, Henry Ward Beecher. Putting him in my stereo viewer here, getting a really good three-dimensional view of his wavy locks and long hair. Now, what was happening in America in 1870 was that Beecher was at the height of his fame. He was a preacher in Brooklyn, New York. He had a huge congregation. He had gained some prominence as an abolitionist. He was the brother, of course, of Harriet Beecher Stowe, and some people believed at this time, when this stereo view was made, he was the most famous man in America. This, however, was all about to change, and the following year, he was about to become the most infamous man in America because he was exposed as having an affair with one of his parishioners. How did that happen? Well, it happened because those involved in the women's rights movement at the time, specifically Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Victoria Woodhull, got together and said they were tired of the hypocrisy and they had wanted to push Beecher to be much more radical on the issue of women's rights and women's suffrage. But he didn't buy it. How do we know he didn't buy it? Well, because we have a copy of the book that they gave him to read, which was by John Stuart Mill, called The Subjection of Women. This is the first edition from 1869, and it's from Henry Ward Beecher's own library. There's his signature and his bookplate and his address. Now, there's no marginalia. Beecher was not very impressed, but Mill argued for the equality of the sexes, railed against the constraints of marriage, and argued for women's suffrage. And somebody who certainly believed in women's suffrage was Victoria Woodhull, because she, at that time, was running for president of the United States. And to help her campaign as president of the United States, she decided to drum up some publicity by writing a letter to the editor in the New York papers saying the following: "Because I am a woman, and because I conscientiously hold opinions somewhat different from the self-elected orthodoxy which men find their profit in supporting, let him that be without sin cast the first stone. My judges preach against free love openly and practice it secretly. Their outward seeming is fair, but inwardly they are full of dead men's bones. I know of one man, a public teacher of eminence, who lives in concubinage with the wife of another public teacher of almost equal eminence, and I shall make it my business to analyze some of these lives." And Woodhull published in her paper the details of the Beecher affair. And this caused Beecher to go to trial. It was a huge scandal. And one interesting fact about the stereo view is I can't find any other copies of this. So it's possible that when he fell out of favor in 1872, 1873, people destroyed their stereo views of Beecher, and husbands didn't want their wives gazing at his hair through their viewers, and that makes it particularly rare and interesting today. Beecher is eventually acquitted, but it's pretty clear that he was indeed not only responsible for that affair, but for many, many similar affairs. The other stereo views contrast with Beecher because there are all these attractive young actresses, and we have one that is a Bessie Ludlow. And Bessie Ludlow, at the time of the Beecher trial, is starring on Broadway in a burlesque. It's a burlesque of Richard III called Bad Dickie. She is so popular in Bad Dickie that she decides to go off to England the following year, and she meets up with a troupe that is performing Gilbert and Sullivan. And she's one of the original stars of the opera company that does Gilbert and Sullivan. And if you don't know Gilbert and Sullivan, well, that was the second thing that I did On Saturday evening after the York Paper Show, I went to Gamut Theater and I saw Innocent Merriment, An Evening with Gilbert and Sullivan. I had a wonderful, wonderful time. And it reminded me that we have a libretto right here in the pamphlets behind me. I pulled it out of that bookcase. Original libretto for HMS Pinafore from 1879. Pinafore was pirated immediately. It was so successful in England that at one time in 1879, in New York City alone, they had 8 different shows all competing against one another. In Philadelphia, there were 6 different shows. And do you remember our friend Julia Marlowe, who wrote that letter that we found in the Hawthorne book a few weeks back on Buy Day? Well, she stars in the first sort of cross-gender version of Pinafore, also in 1879, because she gets to play Sir Joseph Porter, the captain. Pinafore is famous for its opening lines. Let me see if they still work. We sail the ocean blue, and our saucy ship's a beauty.
We are sober men and true, and our saucy ship's a beauty.
Well, it just so happens that we are being greeted by Mr. Matthew Hogan, who is starring in the Gamut Review. It is playing Friday night, Saturday night, and a Sunday matinee. I hope everybody goes to see it. Why should they come see you?
Well, you should come see it because it is a very fun show that is family friendly. You can get tickets at gamuttheatre.org right now. It's GAMUTTHEATRE.org. It's a great night or a great afternoon if you can come on Sunday. Performances are Friday and Saturday at 7:30, Sunday at 2:30.
That's right, 3 shows left. I hope everybody can go tonight. It was a great show, a wonderful show, and you can also see Matt serving you coffee here at the Midtown Scholar. Now, Matt, one interesting thing about Pinafore, which you should know, is that did you know Sir Joseph Porter, who is, of course, the admiral in Pinafore?
Yes, the man who rules the water.
Man who rules the water was based on a bookseller.
Oh, really?
Yes, he was based on a bookseller by the name of W.H. Smith, who still to this day operates bookstores throughout England. Smith got the idea of making his fortune by putting bookstores in train stations. And he did so when they opened one in Liverpool, and when they opened one all throughout England. He made millions of dollars. And if you go to airports like Heathrow today, you'll find W.H. Smith. He was so successful that he used his money to run for Parliament. He got elected, and lo and behold, he became the First Lord of the Admiralty without any experience on an ocean ship. And boy, Gilbert and Sullivan made fun of him. And if you want to see him made fun of, you've got to come see that show. It's my favorite part of the show.
For sure.
All right, we're going to end today with a funny book, also inspired by Matt. Inspired by Matt's, shall we say, distinguished beard, we have 1,000 beards. And I know of very few people who have gone to such an extent as to grow a sort of Victorian firefighter's beard for a Gilbert and Sullivan production. So I got 1,000 beards, which is full of useful information. I was able to find out, the best ways to wax a mustache or order fake beards online. I was filled with very interesting facts, such as, do you know what season of the year your beard whiskers grow the fastest?
Ooh, I don't.
Well, apparently it's summer, and they grow
Summer?
slower in the winter, so the heat must affect beard growth. Well, this is in the Book of Beards.
I would have thought spring because flowers.
Well, it's a good guess. I went searching for your beard. I wasn't sure what to call it. Maybe a sort of mutton chop action going.
I call it the Colonel Mustard.
Yes, that works too. We did, however, have a list of in this book of the most infamous beards in history, and we also have a list of the greatest presidential facial hair. And the thing which I compare your beard to is the #1 U.S. president with facial hair, according to all records, and that's Chester A. Arthur. There he is. I think you've got a Chester A. Arthur. That's what we're going to call it. It's certainly a lovely thing. And you'll get to see that for just a little time remaining, because I understand after Gilbert and Sullivan is done, you'll use this book to learn how to wax your mustache.
Oh, yes. After Gilbert and Sullivan, it's all experimentation.
Well, thanks for joining us for Buy Day, and another fun day with adventures in the world of books. Enjoy your holiday shopping, and we'll be back next Friday and every Friday for more adventures in the book trade.